Welcome to Newsworthy Stories with Jacqueline Jimenez. I can't tell you how excited I am right now. I had a moment not too long ago to share with you and introduce you to Robert Chelsea, who is the first African American to have a full face transplant. But today I get to introduce you to the person who did it, and that is Dr. Palmahak. And Dr. Palmahak, I'm so excited to hear about what you're doing at Yale New Haven Hospital and creating this new team. Can you talk a little bit about what you were doing at Yale this weekend and what's happening?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be on your show, and it's just to put it in perspective, it's really an incredible teamwork. So even though I lead the team, I only am part of that whole infrastructure and the personnel that makes surgery like Robert's happen. I arrived to New Haven and Yale School of Medicine over 2.5 years ago, after spending 25 years in Boston. And the opportunity really was to take the helm of the plastic surgery and the network that includes actually considerably larger network than the one in Boston. And with that enormous opportunity to rebuild some of the programs that were here or strengthen the ones that are existing and develop new ones. And one of the new ones that we have established here is face and hand transplantation program.
Can you talk about a little bit about, before we get to Robert's story, for those who didn't see it, when you saw Robert, or maybe you should talk about it, Robert, when you first saw his case, okay? And for those that aren't familiar, when Dr. Palmahak met with Robert, he was in this, more so this condition than not. What was that? Was he, I know you've done other full face transplants, but what was his case like?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I met Robert the way he looked on the left side of the picture, and that was still in the very early phase of recovery after his tragic accident. And Robert wasn't strong enough to even walk, so he was in a wheelchair. He's been adjusting to new life with all kinds of medical conditions related to the trauma. And so it took a little bit of time to come to the point where he regained the strength, met the milestones that we agreed on, and ultimately remained interested to pursue the transplantation. In a big picture, yeah, we have done total 10 face transplants. This is the only African American. So with that comes a lot of novelty, and everything underneath the skin, the body is the same. So the typing of the blood group and immunology is identical. Robert's situation was complicated because of prior blood transfusions and blood products in general that he got during trauma treatment, but so would be anyone else's. The unique aspects of his care were really related to the darker complexion of the skin and our inability to really, first of all, appreciate the hues of difference among different potential donors and how good potentially the match could be. And secondly, how to later on diagnose rejection if something bad's happening. Typically it presents as pinkness or redness. Sometimes there are rashes or visible skin changes, but we never watched or experienced it with African American patient, and we just were not sure whether we would be able to monitor it the usual way and whether something else would be needed.
So Robert, tell us some of this story about what led up to the accident, or I should say the accident, because that was really what led up to it. But talk about what happened and the condition you were in when you arrived before Dr. Palmahak.
Because I was in an auto accident, I happened to be on the freeway, and my car blew up as a result of a drunk driver hitting me in my car. And when that happened, as a result, my lips were burned off and part of my tongue. You can see the rest of my face and how discolored it was and damaged. So my body pretty much was that way. Many grafts and some amputations ensued. I was also in a coma for the first 6 months and in the hospital for about a year and a half. Then I got discharged and still had to recover for about 3.5, 4 years. During the latter part of those 4 years, which not somewhere around 2015, 16, is when I had the pleasure of meeting Dr. Palmahawk. Most of the other plastic surgeons uh, came straight out and said that there's not a lot they could do for me in terms of covering my lips, other than protecting the lips and the gum with a flap, where I wouldn't have any control or uh, any nerve endings that could control or the blood vessels going through it. So they were suggesting that uh, well, one thing led to another. My last plastic surgeon, who is named Dr. Walter Chang, he had a friend that studied under Dr. Palmahawk,
Hmm.
and he obviously thought that that would be an ideal case. They contacted Dr. Palmahawk. He contacted me, and from that point on, it's been a pleasure to. This is still in the infant stages in terms of face transplants, and yet Dr. Palmahawk, he's done at least he's done 10 face transplants, and there's no one in the world that has done over two.
Wow.
So you can see how fortunate I am to have had opportunity to meet him, and I could see God's hand in it. Fortunately, as a result of that, there was a peace and trust that I could easily embrace with Dr. Palmahawk and his team. Otherwise, I mean, I'd be like anybody else, you know. I mean, my God, and my family and friends, they're all what I went through the burns. You can imagine. Here I am now encountering something that is brand new, never been done before with an African American. I was older than any other facial transplant recipient, um, probably more than 10 years, because the cutoff at that time was age 50 years old for a candidate for a face transplant, and I was already around 64.
Wow.
And of course, the transplant took place when I was 68, going on 69 that year.
Wow.
So that'll
And
give you an
I have
idea of
to
the
tell
background.
you, Dr. Palmahak, one of the reasons why I was so excited to actually talk to you was because of how Robert has spoke so highly of you. He has spoke about not only, the care and all the steps that it takes. And can you talk more about what you're doing at Yale right now?
So since I arrived to Yale, we have a team of it's now 15 plastic surgeons, and first probably year was trying to figure out what are areas of deficiencies, improvements we could make. We had to hire some people, and then the next phase was sort of establishing programs. One of them, as I mentioned, face and hand transplant. We're also putting together a lymphatic surgery program, peripheral nerve and spasticity clinic, peripheral nerve program, the only one in Connecticut. So a lot of opportunities for providing services to our patients that may not have been um, available in the past, and or in not in the extent that we wanted to provide them.
Can you so this the first one was done at Harvard at the Harvard Hospital?
Correct. Yeah, I was at Brigham and Women's Hospital, one of the Harvard teaching hospitals, for 25 years, and that includes my research time, training, and then 17 years on faculty.
In comparison to the other patients that you've worked with, are they all in the United States? Are they in different countries?
Yeah, because of the nature of transplant, where the donor may happen in unpredictable time, we have focused on patients. We looked at international patients, but everybody ended up being in the US. But
Hmm.
we have 2 patients in Indiana, 2 patients in Texas, 1 patient in California, 1 patient in Vermont, one in Connecticut, one was in Massachusetts. So they're scattered across the country. And from that standpoint, I don't think it really matters as much where the patient is, although obviously we would love them all be close. But we always, as part of the preparation, we establish relationships with the local teams, and that allows us to discuss the care that may be needed for our patients after the transplantation, the details of what it may entail, and we remain immediately available if there are any questions or concerns.
What is the importance of creating this team at Yale New Haven Hospital?
I think it is an exciting opportunity. I think it is also leverage a very strong transplant program that exists here. Really, by establishing the program, I truly joined forces and infrastructure that was put together by Dr. Formica, who is a nephrologist, immunologist, and is medical director of our program. So it really dovetails with the mission of the transplant center here at Yale.
Now, Robert, can you talk? I know this is very passionate about for you. When you talk about the need for donors, you touched on it a little bit, Robert, when you were talking about doing the transplant for someone who was African American. So, Robert, you want to touch on that, and then also, Dr. Pomahak, your thoughts. How important is it for people to understand the need for donors, also for burn victims, amputees, and then the mental health side of it all?
Yeah, I don't know if you want to start, Robert, or I could start.
Yes, please go ahead.
Well, I think
age before beauty.
I think there are so many milestones that this case represents. It also reflects so many issues that we deal with in healthcare, the disparities among ethnic groups and minorities, and all the aspects that are sort of unfair in healthcare right now. And I was reflecting on our experience. We screened probably well over 100 patients. Ended up finding about 15 of them suitable to come for in-person visit. And in that range, Robert was the only African American. There may have been one more, but it's really not representing the population, the population distribution. I think it reflects lower donation on the African American side of patients, lower transplant rates for African Americans, all these disparities that are really striking. And so I think Robert's case hopefully opens up the doors, but also minds of people that may have been reluctant or didn't trust the system or felt uncomfortable, because we're here for anybody of any color of skin. And as long as the patient is good patient, and there are a lot of aspects to it, we're ready to help.
And when you say good patient, you mean a match, right?
Well, when we screen patients for transplantation, we look at a number of things: their overall health. We look at their surgical indication, whether sometimes there are simpler procedures that we can do and make significant improvement that they don't need transplant. We look at their social background and ability to have support network. We look at their mental health. So we look at holistically at the patients before they would be considered suitable for transplantation.
What are your thoughts, Robert?
Well, the criteria, I think, is standard in terms of evaluating a transplant patient, which is good. I'm glad that it's universal. It also lends itself to opportunities for everyone if they meet those circumstances. The challenge is everyone does not have the resources to meet those challenges. And when we say resource, the not just the uh, care support, but there is a major mental aspect of going through any form of surgery. And it's very difficult to rate the percentage of success, because it will not be 100% successful because of, in terms of face transplants. It can be, I think, in other areas like kidney, lung, liver, heart, and so on. But with a face transplant, it's so different. You don't just take one organ out and put another one in. My head has its own characteristics. My cheeks, my nose, my chin, my lips, they all have to be uh, tied together. The blood vessels, nerve endings, the muscles, all of that has to be tied together, obviously, in a very intricate way. And so they all don't necessarily get uh, reconnected from the donor to the recipient. It may not fully get reconnected, or it may not fully operate the same as a normal person. And it could be the forehead might operate pretty good, but maybe the cheeks may not, or one cheek, or the chin, and so on. So there are a great deal of uh, uh, possibilities, that is, to correct issues, but also the innovation opportunity that's here. So my advocacy is because if we only have, if you will, one set of eyes, I use a phrase, if one size doesn't fit all, neither should one culture or color be a benchmark for everyone. There are too many variations and opportunities for so many different countries, ethnic groups to identify uh, candidates. And we know all over the world people have been burned, electrocuted, birth defects, and so on. So there are a lot of ways of finding the candidates, but having they label it social support, and that's okay, I guess. But the the challenges really requires, the term village doesn't give it justice. It requires a committed heart, and no matter who it is or how many. God can do so much with one person, but if you had several of godly individuals participating, now if one can turn out 1,000, two can turn out 10,000. So I hope that God continues to open our doors to our heart, that we would receive anyone and evaluate them on the same circumstances. That would be wonderful.
Well,
Um,
also
but
it does make it something that, sorry, more reason for more people to donate. So when you were starting to talk about, one set of eyes, well, I don't know about you, Dr. Pomahak, but I think that if you have more tissue, you can try more things. And if you have more donors, you can try more things. And because you only have, even when you're doing a full face transplant, you have one face to work with. And so the more people who are willing to donate and really consider it, and not, there's a lot of superstitions and things like that. And I just think breaking through that education is part of the key. um, what would you say about that, Dr. Pomack?
Absolutely. I think all it takes is one donor, but it's very, very hard to find one. If you look at the demographics of donors in the New England area, there is about 90% of organ donors are white patients. There's about 5-6% of Asian, and only really small percentage of African Americans. So I think there's an opportunity, and in this case, we cannot use anyone else's face than African American to match the skin color. Uh, we also, one kind of interesting aspect of it is when we looked at the different shades of human skin complexion, turns out there are about 16, 18 different colors that I didn't even appreciate, from light coffee type of uh, gentle hue all the way to dark black, almost blue. There's so many amazing variations, so it makes it challenging for the surgeons to get the right or pick the right patient. But going back to the donors, I think being open-minded and being willing to talk about it, um, and being willing to uh, be giving in that sense is extremely helpful.
Well, there's one other point that I wanted to point out before we head off today, because I know there's so much I could talk to you about, and I hope in the future, to talk more about, what's happening in uh, the life of Robert. I know you did have so many different tests going on, but one of the things that I find extraordinary is not only did you give him a new face, even though I know he's still getting used to it, but you also gave him a new purpose. And, when I see him on this stage, you've given him a way to express himself, and being able to speak and to be, invited as a speaker, because this is like his, his dream now is to teach people the importance of becoming a donor. Uh, and he has a foundation. It's the Robert Chelsea Foundation. And, you can be a part of it in supporting this effort, even by supporting Robert in this foundation. Do either of you have any thought? Does that encourage
Oh,
you to know that he's not just, not only did you help him, change his face, or, be able to eat food because he had lips now, right? That always blew my mind when you first told me that you couldn't, without lips, you couldn't hold your food. But you not just helped him physically, but you helped him, stand before a stage. He wasn't doing that prior
Yeah,
to that accident.
and I think we're fortunate. Robert is an amazing communicator. He's a very spiritual man. He ties all these characteristics and features together that make it easy to relate, understand. He's engaging on the podium. I've been to his speeches and talks, and the probably the best part of all of it is all meant well and for the greater good. So I'm incredibly proud of what he has been doing, and I agree. We all should support his foundation and help along in this process.
Well, thank you so much, Robert.
well,
Anything you want to say before we check out?
I, I sincerely appreciate. We can go on speaking about how much we appreciate, and heaven forbid if we take the time to identify or articulate every single aspect. It's so many because it's a life-changing opportunity. In my case, I see where others might see it as tragic, and I see it as a new dimension for opportunity for others as well as myself. It's it's not a matter of being on the stage. It's really a matter of, to me, it's a matter of living a new life, and hopefully there's a light that reflects a better person than I was before. This is not uh, an alternative. This, I think, is a step up. Now, I might look like a Halloween mask. I might look deformed, different. You got another face. I mean, people don't all just enjoy it because you have another face. They still, in the back of their mind, and make comments about how weird that looks, and so on. Well, which is okay. That's all right. But it's also for me. I get a chance to see where another person would see this experience as a tragedy or a valley experience downhill. I see it as discovering the lilies in the valley. I never would have had I not had this opportunity, and had God not used Dr. Tomahawk's hand to put together the right team for me to be able to be on stage. I lost my lips, and they still don't work that well. You can tell my voice; it's really not the same. And yet, uh, it was revealed to me one day in the hospital I talked to the Lord and asked why did you decide to take my lips away? How do you, you know how much I love sharing about you. How can I do this now with no lips? Plus, part of my tongue was burned off. And as I was expressing myself, in the best way I could, I heard a voice from him. One word, he said, kindness. And of course, I thought immediately, thank you, because you are showing me that wherever I used to be, people might say, oh, you're a gentleman. You were nice already. Yeah. But God was saying, step my game up. See,
All
I'm in
right.
a new dimension now.
Mm-hmm.
Live better, give more,
Mm-hmm.
and it doesn't have to be with a song and dance anymore, but let my light, if you will, so shine. So I appreciate every aspect of my particular journey. And if it happens for me, it can happen for anyone else too.
I tell you what, Robert, you're so inspiring. Dr. Pomahack, I am excited to see you both. And I know this is just the beginning as we go forward, but I'm looking to hear more of the stories and the documentaries that are being told about you and film and everything else. So thank you both for joining me today on Newsworthy Stories. And I hope to hear more when you get your team together and in place.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jacqueline.
My pleasure.